The NBA is horrified by this. Of course, we're looking into the NBA draft. And with the talent, the young talent that the Chicago Bulls have, there is one man that is going to go number one. That man is most likely going to be Cooper Flagg coming out of Duke. And we get to look at the Chicago Bulls' chances of landing Cooper Flagg. Hello, my name is Isaias Jackson Jr. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Bulls Digest. We got to look at the Chicago Bulls' chances of landing Cooper Flagg. Is this going to be a blessing or a curse if they are able to land him? We get to look at the chances and also the fan affair of the whole thing. Of course, we see a mixed bag of emotions going through with the Chicago Bulls throughout the season. There was a couple of fans that wanted them to tank to see if we can get a better chance at landing Cooper Flagg. And while on the flip side, after seeing the success that the Chicago Bulls started to have at the end of the season, we wanted to see a little bit more of that instead of looking at what the record was going to be at the end of the day. So before we get into all that, 67.5% of you guys aren't subscribed. 32.5% of you guys aren't. Look, we appreciate you guys on either side. But look, man, we're in the off season. If you are still a little disappointed, as a lot of us were, as the Chicago Bulls got into that play-in and just completely got shut down by the Miami Heat, we give you the Chicago Bulls news in the nicest and fun way possible. And we also share our emotion because usually 9 times out of 10, we're feeling the exact same way here. So, and also, like, share, and subscribe. You can also comment your thoughts and opinions as well, reread them, and we also have a lot of fun with them as well. So, look, let's get into the Cooper Flagg talk here. Of course, we're looking at the Chicago Bulls' chances of landing Cooper Flagg here. Cooper Flagg was a monster with Duke, averaging 19 points on 48% shooting from the field. He was the guy, and a lot of people watched him in high school. We heard the name Cooper Flagg. Of course, we've seen the high school mixtapes kind of die down a little bit. A lot of people went on to see Cooper Flagg highlights on YouTube. A lot of people, I won't necessarily say they scrambled and scratched and clawed. It wasn't like a Zion Williamson, but it's been a while, since we had an American basketball player, because of course we've seen the hype from Victor Wembanyama and how great he was, but we're hearing about Cooper Flagg and we're seeing him on American soil, and you're seeing, of course, the highlights, the mixtapes on YouTube, of course, just a sensation. And so we get to see the Chicago Bulls' chances right here of them landing Cooper Flagg. The biggest name in college basketball right now is Duke's Cooper Flagg. He's the type of player who will almost certainly go number one in the 2025 NBA draft. No matter which team wins the lottery, if the Bulls somehow landed him, it would feel like destiny stepped in to change everything. NBA.com has already laid the odds, and Chicago is sitting at just 1.7%. That is the third lowest shot in the entire lottery. But yet, hope still isn't lost. Of course, the last time the Chicago Bulls had a 1.7 chance of getting that number one pick, they won the lottery and draft Derrick Rose. But look, I think we can all kind of agree that was in the script. That was in the NBA script there. Look, Derrick Rose being from Chicago, look, that was already made. It was a match made in heaven right there. Of course, you see LeBron out there inaccurate. It's all in the script. It's all in the script for the NBA. So even if they don't win the lottery, there's still a chance for this offseason to be a major win for the Bulls. Throughout the years of the NBA basketball, we've seen all kinds of superstars emerge from the draft who weren't even top 5. And listed at 6'8" and 245 pounds. Of course, we're looking at Colin Murray Bowles, because the Chicago Bulls are landing at the number 12 spot. We're looking at getting at the 12th pick in the draft if we're not so lucky to land the number 1 spot. And of course, we're looking at Colin Murray Bowles out of South Carolina, was one of SEC's top players in the 2024-2025 season, averaging 16.8 points, 8.3 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 1.5 steals, and 1.3 blocks per game as a sophomore. The talented forward still needs to improve as a perimeter shooter, but still has the defensive skill set to make an impact early in his career. Murray Bowles will be 20 years old during his rookie season, potentially giving the Bulls another piece to add to the team's young core. And I think that's the fun part about this, because although Cooper Flagg, I do think, is a machine, I think it's highly unlikely the Chicago Bulls do land on that number 1 spot. I don't think it's in the script for the Chicago Bulls this year, and I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing because of just how we're seeing Colin Murray Bowles and how he performed this year. And I do think this is what the Chicago Bulls need as well. They need somebody on that defensive front as well that's going to help. Of course, they say he needs help as a perimeter shooter, but I feel like the defensive skill set is where the Chicago Bulls need him most. I feel like Montes Buzelis can handle the offensive scoring, can handle being that offensive efficient four there for the Chicago Bulls. Colin Murray Bowles could come in, of course, being the defensive four for the Chicago Bulls. 20 years old, a bright spot. And the reason why I bring him up is because I feel like that's a feel-good story for the Chicago Bulls. They don't need a Cooper Flagg when you have somebody, of course, listed 6'8", 245 pounds, another machine in Colin Murray Bowles. Of course, just being read right here, throughout the years of NBA basketball, we've seen all kinds of superstars emerge from the draft who weren't even at top 5. And honestly, outside of Patrick Williams, I don't necessarily hate most of the Chicago Bulls picks of so far. When you're looking at the Lauri Markkanens, when you're looking at the Wendell Carter Juniors, of course, they didn't overperform when they were in the Chicago Bulls uniform, but the talent was there. The talent was there. And of course, you're seeing Patrick Williams right now. He's not really showing up the way we want him to, but of course you're seeing Dallin Terry, you're seeing of course Montes Buzelis, as we mentioned before. There's still some strength on this team. I think the youth here is absolutely great, and I think Colin Murray Bowles fits perfectly. Cooper Flagg coming in as that number 1 pick, I do think would be a little bit weird for the Chicago Bulls in terms of just how that setting, how that matchup is going to look, how he would fit in with the Chicago Bulls. Because at least in terms on the defensive side, where I think the Chicago Bulls would need to grow at in terms of building their roster, I don't think Cooper Flagg necessarily helps on that front. On the offensive side, of course, that's a no-brainer, obviously. But I do think Chicago Bulls need to focus more on the defensive help, at least going into the offseason, especially if you're going to lose the likes of Nikola Vucevic, who wasn't really a huge help on the defensive side. I can't really say this season, just that, mostly in his career as we look through, and especially with the Orlando Magic. So when you're seeing how the Chicago Bulls can formulate this and lay this out, I think Colin Murray Bowles would be a perfect fit here. If you were on the Cooper Flagg hype train, I'm not here to just say give up on your dreams. Like I said, 1.7% chance it could happen again. But just looking at how this roster is being built and how it's being shaped right now, I firmly believe the Chicago Bulls don't necessarily need the likes of a Cooper Flagg. I do think having somebody like a Colin Murray Bowles would just work out just fine. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your comments in the comment section. Do you think the Chicago Bulls have a great chance? Do you have faith in the Chicago Bulls landing a Cooper Flagg? Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.